Forget dragons and plagues. The real danger in medieval times was fashion. Yes, fashion. People were dying to look beautiful, quite literally. Poisoned clothes, crushing corsets, and shoes so strange they could break your bones. This is the shocking story of how style almost became a weapon. Back in the Middle Ages, people didn't have safety rules or science to protect them. What you wore showed who you were, your class, your wealth, your power. But beauty came with pain, and sometimes with death. Let's uncover the deadly secrets behind medieval fashion, where elegance could kill. If you love strange and dark history stories like this, make sure to subscribe and stay with me till the end, because what you'll hear next might surprise you. Imagine walking through a grand medieval court. Golden chandeliers flickering. Above, velvet curtains hanging heavy in the air, and nobles swirling in gowns of emerald green, sapphire blue, and royal crimson. It looked like paradise painted in silk. But behind that beauty, death was hiding in plain sight. In medieval Europe, colour wasn't just decoration, it was power. The deeper and brighter your clothing, the higher your place in society. Poor villagers wore dull browns and greys, while nobles shone like jewels. But few knew that these shimmering colours came with a deadly price. The secret lay in the dye. You see, medieval tailors didn't have safe chemical formulas or protective gloves. They worked with what her breathing grows shallow. Servants whisper of bad luck, curses and spirits. No one suspects the fabric itself. The poison didn't stop with her. The tailors who handled the dyes suffered even worse. Their hands turned raw and pale from mercury burns. Their lungs blackened from breathing in powdered arsenic. Many died young, their graves unmarked, their craft forgotten. They were the silent victims of fashion. The artists who created beauty but paid with their lives. And still, the colours spread. Kings wanted brighter banners, queens demanded deeper gowns. Merchants competed to sell the most vibrant cloth. It was the medieval version of a toxic beauty trend, one no one dared question. Because to look dull was to look poor, and in a world ruled by appearance, dullness was death of another kind. Centuries later, historians discovered what those people never knew, that the stunning greens of the 15th century were the same arsenic compounds used later in rat poison. Even museum curators today handle old garments with gloves and masks. Yes, these clothes are still dangerous hundreds of years later. In the end, fashionable became a deadly word. The nobles wrapped themselves in poison and called it luxury. The tailors died in silence and called it their trade. And history learned one brutal truth, that sometimes beauty doesn't just fade, it kills. Picture a grand hall lit by hundreds of candles. Music drifts through the air, laughter echoes off marble walls, and women in glittering gowns glide across the floor like porcelain dolls. They move with grace, their waists impossibly small, each breath shallow, each smile carefully held. Beneath the silken lace lies their secret weapon and their silent killer, the corset. In the age of kings and queens, beauty meant control. A woman's body was expected to be sculpted into perfection, slender, curved, and still. And so every morning began with a ritual of pain. Servants pulled long ribbons through metal eyelets, tugging tighter and tighter until the lady's waist looked no wider than her husband's hand. Bones cracked softly under the pressure. Breath came short, sharp, and shallow. But when the mirror reflected elegance, the suffering was forgotten, at least for a while. Corsets were more than clothing. They were armor made of whalebone, metal, and cloth. They shaped women into the ideal form of beauty that society demanded, but they also shaped their suffering. Doctors of the time warned of fainting fits and crushed organs, but fashion ruled stronger than medicine. Women wore them for hours, even days, without removing them, believing that pain was a small price for perfection. At royal banquets, fainting wasn't rare. It was in the grand halls of medieval Europe. Beauty wasn't just seen, it was built. The richer the woman, the taller her headdress. Some rose so high they nearly brushed the chandeliers, towering cones wrapped in silk, lace, and jewels. These weren't just accessories, they were statements. Each inch upwards screamed power, status, and vanity. But behind the shimmer lay suffering. These crowns of fabric and metal could weigh as much as a small child. Women's necks ached, their scalps throbbed, and their posture stiffened like soldiers on parade. Every movement had to be graceful, or disaster could strike. Candles flickered in every room, open flames licking the air, and one careless turn, one gust of wind, could turn elegance into horror. There are accounts of noble women's veils catching fire during banquets, their silken towers engulfed in seconds. Servants rushed forward to smother the flames, but many walked away scarred, if they walked away at all. Beauty, quite literally, burned. The weight of these headdresses also caused long-term pain. Hair ripped out, headaches that lasted for days, even permanent damage to the spine. Yet the women wore them proudly, smiling through the agony. To appear effortless, even when in pain, was the ultimate sign of grace. Every layer of fabric, every shining jewel, came with a price. And though centuries have passed, the story feels strangely familiar, because even today, many still suffer silently under the weight of beauty standards. In the Middle Ages, vanity wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. In the streets of medieval Europe, style began at your feet. And the most fashionable choice? A shoe so absurd it could barely touch the ground. They were called poulaines, long pointed shoes that stretched far beyond the toes, curling upward like a bird's beak. The longer the point, the higher your status. For nobles, it wasn't enough to be rich. You had to look untouchable. And what better way than to wear shoes that made walking nearly impossible? Men of power strutted through castles with toes so long they had to tie the tips to their knees with strings, just to keep from tripping. In the royal courts, fashion was everything, and pain was irrelevant. If you could still stand, you weren't trying hard enough. But the streets told a different story. Imagine uneven cobblestones, muddy alleys, and slippery tiles. Now add a foot-long toe to every step. People stumbled, fell, and twisted their ankles daily. Records even describe nobles breaking bones and shattering knees, all while pretending nothing was wrong. Because to admit pain was to admit weakness, and weakness had no place in high society. Even the church took notice. Priests began to preach against these devilish shoes, calling them symbols of pride and vanity. Some kingdoms even tried to ban them, but the nobles refused to let go. Their long, curling toes had become a badge of importance, a silent message that said, "I don't walk among commoners, I glide above them." Yet beneath all the luxury lay misery, feet deformed, joints twisted, and many could barely walk without pain. What began as elegance turned into torment. Fashion had chained the body, and no one dared break free. In the glitter of the Middle Ages, people didn't just follow trends. They suffered for them, and while the shoes of today may not break bones, the idea remains the same. Style still has a price. So next time you slip on something just to impress, remember, in medieval times, people quite literally fell for fashion. Jewelry that killed. When beauty turned into murder in the glittering courts of medieval Europe, jewelry was more than fashion. It was power. A single gem could tell the world who you were. Your rank, your fortune, your influence. Crowns sparkled with diamonds, rings gleamed with rubies, and brooches shone brighter than the torches that lit the grand halls. But behind that beauty, some jewels hid death. Among nobles, trust was rare and betrayal was common. At royal banquets, enemies sat side by side, smiling across golden tables. Every glance polite, every word rehearsed. No one knew which hand might strike next. So, jewelry became more than decoration. It became defense. Craftsmen were paid fortunes to design pieces that were beautiful to the eye and lethal to the touch. Rings with hollow compartments, perfect for storing a drop of poison. Brooches with spring-loaded needles, hidden behind ornate designs. Necklaces that could open with a twist, releasing deadly powder into a drink or onto a hand. At a royal feast, one flick of a wrist could seal a fate. A simple gesture, adjusting a ring, pinning a brooch, could be the last thing someone ever saw. Fashion had become a silent weapon. History whispers of kings, queens, and courtiers who met their end not by sword, but by sparkle. A poisoned jewel was elegant, discreet, and untraceable. It killed without chaos, without blood. Just a slow, graceful fade from life to legend. But even for those who weren't assassins, jewelry carried danger. Some gemstones were treated with toxic substances to enhance their shine. Wearing them for too long could cause illness, sores, even death. People suffered in silence, believing it was the price of beauty. To be admired was to be envied. To be envied was to be at risk. In that world of silk and secrets, fashion didn't just show who you were. It decided if you would survive the night. Jewelry, once a symbol of status, became the perfect disguise for murder. The sparkle on your finger could dazzle a room or end a life. Even today, when we see a diamond glimmer under the light, it carries a ghost of that history. A reminder that in the past, beauty could kill as easily as a blade. Not everyone was trapped by the madness of medieval fashion. While nobles risked their lives for beauty, the simple folk, farmers, healers, craftsmen, wore what truly mattered: comfort and survival. Loose tunics, soft wool and sturdy shoes. No glitter, no poison, no pain. And because of that, they lived longer and wiser. But the rich, they were caught in a deadly illusion, believing elegance was worth suffering for. They wrapped themselves in poison, squeezed their ribs to breaking, and burned beneath their crowns of pride. Every shimmer came with a hidden cost, every compliment with a silent curse. It's strange, isn't it? Centuries later, we still do the same thing, just in new ways. We chase beauty through filters, surgeries, and impossible standards. Different era, same obsession. The tools may have changed, but the hunger to be perfect never really left us. History whispers a warning. When beauty demands pain, maybe it's time to stop and ask, is it really worth it? Because once upon a time, looking perfect could kill you, and maybe, in some ways, it still can. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join me for more dark, fascinating tales from history, where beauty met danger and vanity often led to tragedy. Because sometimes, the past isn't as far away as it seems.